Short format video has become extremely popular, but for those of us involved in software screen capture, the format poses some unique challenges. For quite some time, both software and video have been optimized for a 16:9 aspect ratio, but the short format is 9:16. So let's see how OBS can help us solve this unique challenge. Let me start by sharing with you why I think OBS is such a great solution for this type of screen capture. The first thing is that within OBS, you can define a profile that sets the recording resolution you want to capture at. So in my case, I want to capture at 1080 by 1920, or that 9:16 aspect ratio. The other nice thing about this is that I can define scenes. And scenes basically allow me to set recording zones on the software that I'm trying to capture. So for example, you can see that right now I'm set to screen left, but if I wanted to pan over and capture the center of my software, I can select center. And if I want to go to the right, I select right. And I do this by setting a custom transition on each of those scenes. Now, probably the more important thing about these scenes is that I get visibility into exactly what I'm capturing. So for example, on this, if I want to make sure that my task pane and the software takes up the full screen, I can adjust this over and I can then confirm that, yep, now my task pane fills up the whole recording area. Once I've got that defined, all I have to do is hit record. So now that you understand why OBS is a nice solution for this type of screen capture, let me walk you through how you can set each of these up as if you were doing it from scratch. So inside of OBS, let's start by going to the Profile menu and selecting New. We'll provide it a name. So in this case, I'm going to call it 9:16 Shorts, and then I'll go ahead and hit OK. Now for me, I'm going to select to optimize this based on recording. So we'll select that and hit next. And then I'm going to define the frames per second as 30 frames per second. And then hit next. Let's go ahead and apply the settings. And with those settings applied now, let's go in and select the settings button over here on the right. We're going to adjust a couple settings here. The first is in the video. You want to manually type in 1080 by 1920. And once you have this typed in, you should be able to select that same resolution from the output dropdown. Now, with those settings defined, go ahead and click on Output and select whatever recording format you want to use. I'm going to use MP4. And then we'll go ahead and click OK. So the next thing we want to do then is set up a set of scene, and we do this through defining a scene profile. So we'll come into Scene Selection, you can select New, and I'm going to give it the same name, 9:16 Shorts. And then we'll hit OK. All right, so the next thing then, let's go in and we'll start defining the source for where we want to capture. So in my case, I'm going to select to capture the display. I'll just name this desktop and hit OK. And I want to define or change the display to my second display, which is where the software is that I'm going to be capturing. So once you've defined this, you may need to just go ahead and adjust the capture area. So I'm going to pull this down so that it fills up the full area of where I'm recording. And then let's come in and start by, we'll rename this scene. The default one that's there, let's just call this Screen Left. Looks good. And then we'll right click on that and we're going to choose to duplicate. What's nice about duplicating is that it captures any sources that are already defined in the previous scene. So we'll just rename this and call this Screen Center. I'm going to add a little caret that indicates which direction I'm headed when I'm going center. And you'll see why that becomes important here in just a little bit. So with screen center defined, I'm going to go ahead and click and drag the capture area to the left. And so now let's go in and duplicate this one more time. And this one I'm just going to rename to screen right. And then hit OK. All right, so with screen right now, let's just drag the capture area all the way over. Next thing, let's go in and select each of these just to preview what they look like. You'll notice that when I go to screen center, what it's doing is it's actually doing a fade. And what I want to have happen is just a nice natural pan, as if I'm panning across the screen. So to do this, we're going to come over to our transitions and we'll select to add a slide. And I'm going to call this slide left. And then we'll go ahead and hit OK. And you can preview the transition here, which is it's doing what I'm looking for it to do. So I'll hit OK. And I'm going to right click on the scene now and choose to do a transition override, and I'm going to pick slide left. The other thing I found is that the timing of the transition works best when set to about 1,000. It gives a nice, easy slide across the screen. So we'll just go ahead and set this to 1,000. That looks good. And then let's define one more transition. And this one is going to be a slide, but we're going to name it slide right. And I'll hit OK. And this time I'm going to change the direction to right. Select OK. And now this transition is what I'm going to assign to my screen left scene, right? So we'll go back in, we'll do transition override, and I'm going to select slide right. And then we'll define the time just like we did before as 1,000. Just key in 1,000. Perfect. So now when I pick center, it transitions to the center. When I pick left, it pans back to the left. So that looks good, center. And now let's do right. We just need to set the transition on this one. So we'll select slide left and we'll set the transition time to 1,000. Okay, so now we're all set there. Everything is working the way we want. We can get to the left-hand side of our screen, we can get to the center, we can get to the right, but now we want to be able to transition back to the center when we're on the right-hand side of the screen. So we're going to duplicate the center, and I'm just going to change which way my arrow shows, and hit OK. And now let's go in and right click on this and set the transition override to slide right. There we go. So now if I'm on the right side of the screen and I pick to go to the center, it pans in the direction I would expect. If I click scene left, it pans the rest of the way over. And I have a nice set of transitions through each of the zones on my software. Now, these are just some examples. You may find that you want some additional zones. You may want 5 zones instead of 3. And so you can set those up and make sure you're capturing the areas of the software that you're looking to convey in your screen capture. So that's it. I hope you found this helpful in how you can utilize OBS to do software screen captures but in a vertical 9:16 format.